Great. So this class is a little bit of a mixed class. So if you are one of my teacher trainees, I'm departing from my usual protocol and going wide rather than deep. And the wide that we're going to do today is breath plus bones plus a little bit of core support. So I'm going to take those three pillars. And I wanted to show you a couple of pictures first, just to sort of orient us into the territory. So this is a bone, a generic bone. And we looked 2 weeks ago at what I call, or what we in BMC call, pathways of weight. So how weight travels through bones and how we can get strong bones and kind of a clear alignment. And here you can see that bone has a couple of layers. So we have the periosteum, which is essentially the skin of the bone. And if you've ever banged your shin bone, you'll know that it is pretty sore. The next layer down from the periosteum is what's called the cortical bone. And you can see it here. It looks a little bit like tree trunks stacked on top of each other. The layer underneath that we're seeing here is trabecular bone, which is a little bit more, there are little struts in trabecular bone. It has a different look and feel to the tree trunks of cortical bone. And then underneath that, we have bone marrow. So the life blood, the blood in the bones. And what's interesting about bony architecture is that bones lay down more bone depending what sort of forces we put through them. So if, for example, there is a lot of forces coming through a bone, like, for example, at the head of the femur, then you may get more trabecular bone. And if there are more direct forces coming through a bone, more direct pathways of weight, you might get more cortical bone. Yeah, but all bone has all of these things. See if I can just get, yes. So this is just another picture. This gives you here on the right, the cortical bone. You can see there are spaces here for the blood vessels to travel through. Here are the struts of the trabecular bone. And here is the marrow. And it can be really useful to know that you have blood in your bones. Yeah, that your bones are not these static, dry, desiccated things that we see when we look at a bony skeleton. They really have life force in them. And they adapt and they mold to gravity. So our relationship to gravity is what helps shape our bones. And I just find that fascinating. So we have this seeming paradox between the idea that we have pathways of weight through bone, and at the same time that all of the bones in the body are held in a tension compression network called a biotensegrity architecture. Yeah. And I will talk another time about biotensegrity and its implications. But from a fascial perspective, bones are what the fascia is called starched fascia. Yeah, they are just a particularly dense form of fascia. And for today, I'd like us to roll with the idea that part of what helps that biotensegrity architecture function is breath. Yeah. So your breath floats your bones. It actually floats all your tissues, but it definitely floats your bones. And that's one of the things that we're going to look at today. So here is your diaphragm. This is from Netter. You're looking up at the diaphragm. So here's L4, L3, L2, L1, your lumbar spine. And you're looking from below at this gorgeous horizontal structure, this horizontal membrane that beats 22,000 times a day just so that you can breathe. And I am really fascinated by these parallel horizontal membranes in the body, like the pelvic floor and the thoracic diaphragm, because they operate sort of differently to a lot of our other muscles. This is just another image. So here's your diaphragm up here. And you have these long handlebars of the diaphragm, which are called crura. And Bonnie Bainbridge says that these extend all the way down to your tail. So you can see why when your diaphragm moves, your entire structure might get impacted. Yeah. And even though the diaphragm here looks kind of meaty and substantial, could we also bear in mind as we go through the class today the idea of the diaphragm like a jellyfish? Yeah, so that it might have the fluidity. We know that the body is 70% fluid. So even though it's a muscle and it's a membrane, could it also, in its function, be fluid? Because essentially we are fluid. And I'll be talking a little bit today about the container that gets created between your thoracic diaphragm, your pelvic floor, your spine, and a muscle which is called your inner corset, or your TA, your transversus abdominis, which wraps around everything. And I've got one more picture here. I adore cross sections. If you want to know about anatomy, look at cross sections. So here's your spine. So you're looking towards the front of the body. This would be your rectus abdominis. Here's all of what I call your core body, which is your organs. And around here on the outside, we have essentially what are called the core muscles. And you can see that what those core muscles protect are, in fact, the organic body in here. It makes up the bulk of us. And the very innermost layer of these core muscles is your inner corset, or your TA, your transversus abdominis. Again, if the pictures don't speak to you, just let them go over your head. If they help inform what we'll do later, then just know that your brain takes in and processes things in many, many ways. So what we'll be looking at today is essentially how your breath moves your bones, how the action of your diaphragm and some of your other muscles might float your body, and how that helps us with both strength and stability. So this is from the breathing book, Danafari, just a couple of pictures. Idea of how the breath floats the bones. And the whole of your body breathes. That's really the takeaway message from this. Whole of the body breathes. Okay, so those are just some images to start us going. You will need for this class a mat. If you like to work with a blanket under you, you can have a blanket, and you need either a squishy ball like this, or a block, or even a cushion to put between your knees at a certain point. So I'll give you a minute to gather your stuff. And when you're ready, come down onto your back into constructive rest. So that's on your back with knees bent. And find that perfect position for your feet. Not too close, not too far. Where might you place the feet so that your pelvis and your spine are in neutral? Now, for some of you, you may need something under the head if your chin tilts up, for example. Take what you need to be comfortable. I'm going to be here for a couple of minutes. And as you settle in, finding the ground, giving weight, receiving support. Again and again and again. You'll find this instruction at the beginning of most of my classes. And that's because our fundamental relationship is to gravity and to space. So you might breathe out and let yourself settle on an out breath or the pause after the out breath. And then turn your attention to the breath itself. And the weather or the tone or the feeling of the breath in the body today. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it stormy? Is it stable? Is it smooth? Is it sticky? And again, you bring this quality of being a somatic scientist to your observation, your witnessing of yourself. This kind of neutral observing. So natural breath. Let it be your natural breath as it is right now. And then see, could you let yourself be breathed? So it's an invitation. What would it be like if I could let myself be breathed? Might there be a larger rhythm of the breath that could carry it towards the fingers and the toes, towards the head and the tail? And often the easiest place to feel for the breath floating the bones is around the pelvis, this gentle oscillation of the pelvis that happens with every breath. You can sense it, you can feel it, you can imagine it, you can visualize. And these are subtle sensations. So simply put the brain in the body and just notice. And part of what the breath does, the sort of function of the breath as it moves the tissues, is that it creates health. It helps lubricate the facet joints in the spine, for example. It helps move fluid into the spinal discs. It helps the pelvis, in this case, oscillate around the heads of the femurs. The little bits of synovial fluid being lubricating here in this movement. And then from the pelvis, draw the awareness up towards the shoulder girdle. And this can be slightly easier if you have the hands just by your sides rather than on your belly. And see if you can notice a movement of your arms or shoulders. What happens? What happens when you breathe in the upper body? And could you imagine your breath floating your bones? And of course, in a healthy structure, we don't want the joints of the body to touch. Yeah, there is a joint space. Now, it's a very small, glidey space, but there is a space for a reason. When we get bones touching, we get something called bone spurs that occur. So as your breath floats your bones, it's also floating your joints. And again, we're back to this gorgeous paradox of pathways of weight within a whole biotensegrity architecture where everything is suspended in a web of connective tissue. And I love exploring these things. It's different ways of being embodied. And if you go to an abdominal breath for a couple of breaths now, bring your hands onto your belly. And let your belly get big on your inhale without forcing or pushing, just a natural swelling on the inhale and a natural settling on the exhale. And see if that ebb and flow helps you maybe touch base with the pelvic oscillation. Gentle rocking back and forth. So it's almost as if the breath from the belly might travel all the way down. And keep going with that for a couple of moments. Breath traveling all the way down into the belly. And now contain the belly a little bit as you breathe in. And then let it go. Contain the belly a little bit on the in-breath. And as you breathe out, contract a little bit more. And if you bring the heels of the hands onto your as is and your middle fingers touching, if you pull back just a little bit, right in the middle where your fingers touch, you will activate your transversus abdominis. So see what it's like to engage a little bit more of your inner corset on the exhale. And on the inhale, to keep that containment. So your belly won't move as much. So in thoraco-diaphragmatic breathing, there are two stages. Diaphragm descends, meets the containment of your inner corset, and then the ribs expand. So try that on for size a couple of times now, keeping the belly contained as you breathe in. So it just meets the gentle resistance of a more contained lower body. And that gentle resistance then can signal the ribs to expand in all directions. Then you breathe out. And what's that like? How is it different from abdominal breath? You feel the breath floating the bones in a different way. It's a more contained structure. There's maybe more tension in the architecture. And then let that go for a moment. And just move however you wish. So let go, if you like, of the focus of that. So where we're going to travel into is something called pulsing. Some of you know it and some of you don't. So I'm going to demonstrate it. So I'm on the back with the knees bent. And if I add a little push release from the feet, what happens is I get a movement that travels up through the body. And it travels through all of these horizontal structures. So the pelvic floor, which we know is not a floor, is a bit more like the hull of a ship, through the jellyfish of the thoracic diaphragm, all the way up through the vocal diaphragm and into the brain. So as we push and release, or press and release, we want to send a very loose jiggling all the way sort of vertically, if you like, up towards the brain. Now, if you prefer to do this with one bent leg and one straight leg, then you might try that. You can also do it with two straight legs. Just notice what feels appropriate for you and then allow yourself find a rhythm. It's a little push release. And we're going to go for about 1 more minute. So you keep yourself going in your own time. And see how it could be easy. How you could stay relaxed in the face and the jaw and the throat. How you could let the movement of that pulsing travel, if you like, all the way up into the brain and the head and the skull. And where it could be nice to be curious today is around the thoracic diaphragm. how the pulsing travels through the thoracic diaphragm. And whether it's a free transition, whether it moves clearly and easily or not. And then pausing in your pulsing in your own time, and in the pause, just listening for the ripple or the glow, any tingling, kind of the after effect of moving your fluids and moving your energy. And then take your ball or your block or your cushion, whatever you're using, in your constructive rest now, and put it in between your thighs. And we're going to do just a little stabilizing exercise, very simple. We push the feet away as if you wanted to push them towards the end of your mat, but they don't move. We squeeze the ball or the block or the cushion, and we engage a little bit in the inner corset. So it's a 1, 2, 3. Push the feet, squeeze the knees, engage the TA a little bit. So one of the ways of doing that is by pulling straight back at the midpoint between your two as-is bones. And one of the ways you know that you're doing it, if you like, is that your as-is bones, your two sticky out hip bones, will come closer together. Yeah. So it's push the feet, squeeze the knees, engage the TA, and then release the TA, release the knees, release the feet. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Try that in your own time now. Push the feet, squeeze the knees, engage the TA, letting go of the TA, go of the squeeze, go of the push of the feet. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And go a few times. 1, 2, 3. How much tone do you need to add? 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And you might notice that squeezing through the adductors also helps you engage into the pelvic floor and also helps you engage the TA. So there's a whole internal chain here that goes all the way up to the base of your tongue, actually. And then allow that action, if you like, to inform a rolling bridge. So in rolling bridge, you're simply coming up little by little. So you might lift up an inch, a couple of centimeters, and then come back down again. And then the next time you reach your tail, you might lift up 2 inches, a few more centimeters, come back down. And use the pushing of the feet, the squeezing of your object, and a little bit of engaging through the TA to help you find a sense of containment in this. What's it like to be contained? It's still early in class. It's different times of the day for you. So go as high or as low as feels appropriate. One more in your own time. When you come up this time to whatever height you're coming to, pausing, reaffirming the feet, breathing right up into the top of the sternum. And as you breathe out, lengthening through the tail. So breathing in, creating space in the upper. Breathing out, creating length in the lower. One more breath. And then slowly, slowly down. Taking your object out, whatever you're using. Letting the knees spiral a couple of times or bringing the knees towards the chest, whatever you need. And then let's work with rolling up. So draw your knees and your arms in a little bit for a moment. Roll to your side and roll up. And then we're going to go back down to the other side and roll up. And can you go down to go up? Can you find the strength and stability by going down into gravity? And could that just let you rise? Yeah. You might be rolling through the spine. You might be reaching through the head. But just have a little fun with it. These learning transitions is so important if you're going to practice yoga. So, so important. One more each side in your own time. And then find your way back onto hands and knees. And we're going to play with pathways of weight through the spine. So this is an exercise I learned many years ago from Amy Matthews. I've been using it for a long time. So take a regular, what I call a commoner gardener cat-cow for a moment or two. And just notice how you move through your spine, how you move through the front bodies of your vertebra, vertebra to disc, to vertebra to disc, to vertebra to disc. You might go back and review Safe in My Body, Safe in Myself 2 if you want an intro to that. And then find neutral. And see now, if you were to start your arch from your lumbar spine and send it 2 directions, towards the head and towards the tail. And if you were to start your curl from your thoracic spine and send it 2 directions, towards the head and towards the tail. Arching from the lumbar spine, it's a short journey to the tail and a long journey through the vertebra of the spine to the head. And rounding from your thoracic, it's a short journey to the head and a longer journey to your tail. One more pass, arching from the lumbar spine, rounding from the thoracic, the upper. Stay in the rounding the next time that you're there. So you're looking down at your feet to your toes. And now we'll go a curve up and a curve down. So start the arch now from the back of the neck. So it has a short journey to the head and a very long journey to the tail. And then start the rounding from your sacrum and let it take a short journey to the tail and a long journey to the head. arching from the cervical, letting it travel through the pathways of weight in the spine, rounding from the sacral curve, and again letting it travel 2 directions simultaneously. And if this is frying your brain, then just know that your brain also loves novelty, loves doing new stuff. But take your time in the application of that new stuff. Okay, stay in your rounding the next time that you're there. We're going to go to the final 2 curves, which are the tail and the occiput. So as you arch now, start it from your tail. Let it go tail to sacrum, to lumbar spine, to thoracic spine, to cervical spine, to occiput, skull. And as you round, start it from the occiput, so rounding in the head, and go occiput, cervical spine, thoracic spine, lumbar spine, sacrum, tail. Try that on for size. Start at the tail and go bit by bit through your vertebra until you get all the way up to the head. And then start at the head. Try not to cheat. And go all the way vertebra by vertebra, as if you're picking each one up all the way down to your tail. And then pause in child for a moment. Let all of that go. Let all of that go. And when you're ready, bring yourself back up to sitting. And we're going to come into this lunging position that I use quite a lot. So right foot forward. I'm going to go back and forth a few times just in this relatively neutral lunge. If you need to pad your back knee, then do. You're finding the pathway of weight through the bones, clearest pathway. And now tuck your back toes and go forward and back. Now this bending deeply of the back knee, this coiling into the back foot is the thing that is often challenging for folks. But see if you can find your way. So we've been doing the past couple of weeks, front to back. And then how would you turn so that you're parallel in the feet? And now go side to side. And can you find your way side to side? Okay, whichever is the back of your mat now, how would you organize yourself turning towards the back of the mat? And if you study with me, you'll know that I find the transitions as interesting as the poses. The transitions are the poses. Turning to the middle again. How can you reorganize yourself? Side to side, through the bones, so you can carry a calm spine, free diaphragm, back to the front again. And then back into downward facing dog. Bending one knee, bending the other. And when you're ready, step forward with your left leg and do the same thing. So you're going to go back and front. So you're to the front of your mat. And then how do you turn so that you're facing the middle of your mat? And you're going side to side. What's the pathway? And one of the things that creates clear pathways is push. Push helps gravity shape different bone cells. It's really amazing how the body works. And then turning to the back of your mat, back and forth. Back to the middle. And back to the front. And then into downward facing dog. And spiraling a little in your down dog. And from your down dog, walk your hands back for a moment so that you're in a squat. You can be squat with heels off, hands on the floor. And in our squat, we're going to go side to side. So you can have the hands on the floor if you like. You can have the hands on the knees. Side to side, just a little bit of warm up. And what pathways do we travel through? And then coming back into a more parallel footed squat, either heels down or heels off. Yeah. And we're going to go squat to forward bend with soft knees, to spinal rolling up. It's a little vinyasa. To spinal rolling down, to squat. So here we are back into some of our lower diaphragms, but definitely into the push of the feet. Squat to soft forward bend with bent knees, to spinal rolling up, feet to head, to spinal rolling down, down into the squat. And do that a few times. Squat to forward bend, to roll up, to roll down, to squat. And if you want to add tree of life arms, you go squat to forward bend, to roll up, and as the push comes under the heart and the lungs, you float both arms, bringing them back to where the palms touch, folding down, back into the squat. Squat, forward bend, push up, float the arms, hands in prayer, forward bend, squat. So choose your way. Squatting isn't for you, do a half squat or omit it. And then finding a breath rhythm over the next couple of passes. Finding a breath rhythm that works for you. What's the pace of the breath and the movement that's going to be the most sustainable for you? And then staying in the squat the next time that you're there. And from your squat, walking yourself out into a down dog. So how can you get yourself animalistically, if you like, from your squat into your down dog? And from your down dog, step your feet now a little longer, a little further away from your hands. And take a ripple through into plank. Now, I can't do this at the moment, so I'm not going to demo. But go dog to plank. And then bend your knees, reach your tail, and go back to dog. Next couple of rounds, same thing. Dog to plank. Bend the knees, reach the tail, go back to dog. So it's a sort of ripple through to plank. And I'd like you to see what of your inner corset naturally comes into play to help sustain the plankness of plank. What naturally comes up to the surface. And we sort of woke up some of those inner core muscles before. And you can test that by staying in plank for a couple of breaths. And just noticing what you notice. What is your breath like when you stay in plank? Is it more the rib cage moving and a little bit more containment through the lower body? Is it less of the bones floating in a free-floating way in a different tension, compression network? And then when you're ready, walk your hands, the next time you're in dog, walk your hands back towards your feet. So you're back into a hanging forward bend. And then bring yourself to stand. And just notice you're standing for a moment. There's this new relationship to gravity and the ground and space. And take a little walk. I know some of you don't have a lot of space, but take a little walk around your room and just orient yourself in your space. Walls, floor, your mat, whatever's outside. If you've got a window in your space, I've got trees outside. I'm super lucky. Breath and feet, gravity. And walking yourself back to your mat. We're going to do something called the breath of joy, which is a 3-part in-breath and then an out-breath. So with both arms, you go breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, and then the out is here. So it's a breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, and then breathe out. Yeah? So let's try that together. You're going to use both arms. And then out. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, and out. Breathe in, same in-breath. Breathe in and out. In, and out. In, and out. Keep going in your own time. It's a and out. And out. Yeah. 3-part in-breath and go. 3-part in-breath and go. And let the out be as exclamatory, as expletive, as vocal as you wish. If you want to add a ha or an ooh or a no or a yes or a nothing at all, what is it that might add to your outness, the outness of the out-breath? One more in your own time. And then as you come up, again, just pausing, take the feet slightly wider and just let yourself swing. So swinging, if you like, on the horizontal axis of your thoracic diaphragm, your thoracic jellyfish. And that's a term I had heard many, many times over the years. And then my buddy Sam Lowe used it again recently. And I went, aha, the jellyfish, the inner jellyfish. Such a good image for our fluid body. You might swing the arms progressively a little broader. Remember, the heart and lungs are expressed through the arms and hands. They're sort of the heart's messengers. So as you feel and find yourself in space now, feeling for this horizontal quality of your thoracic diaphragm, the freedom, and of course it's a double dome, it's a double parachute, it's not a straight line, but just feel for its orientation that's so different to the verticality of the spine or to a lot of other things that we know that are up, down. Good. Okay. Then let that go. And let's take that horizontal quality now into something else. Bring yourself back down to sit. Dandasana style. Let yourself sit on something high if you like. We're going to step the right sit bone back. So now if you can see my feet, you'll see the right foot is further back than the left foot. Going to bend up the left knee, the right knee. Going to take hold of the right knee with the left hand. Right hand is behind me. And our mantra here is inhale, lengthen head to tail. Exhale, turn. Pause and stabilize. Inhale, lengthen head to tail. Exhale, turn. Pause and stabilize. And see if you can keep working with the horizontal quality of your diaphragm, your thoracic diaphragm. Could it move you? Could it move you? So it's more, if you like, about an internal movement than an external movement, and certainly less about the arms doing leverage and more about your core body. And then come out on that side. Step your right sit bone back again, so it's parallel with the left. So your two legs, if you happen to have the same legs, your two legs will look pretty even. And you're going to step your left sit bone back, bend up the left knee, holding or hugging the left knee with the right arm, left arm behind you. Nice and long through that straight leg, nice and grounded. Inhale, lengthen head to tail. Exhale, turn. Pause, stabilize. Inhale, lengthen head to tail. Exhale, turn. Pause, stabilize. Inhale, lengthen head to tail. Exhale, turn. Pause, stabilize. One or two more breaths in your own time. And come back to your center again. Walking that left leg back out parallel with the right. And then take your hands either side of you. So you're in a kind of classic Dandasana. Take a flexed point with the feet. So you reach the heels and then you let the feet imagine as if they're coming over a ball. And then spider walk your hands all the way around to wherever it is they want to go. Really doesn't matter where. And let yourself pause there for a moment. Letting go of the instructions, the doing. Just being in your body. Slowly come up in your own time. You do one more thing, which is to take that shape upside down. So you can choose whether you want to roll out into a lazy halasana and stay there, or whether you want to come back and forth. So you're going to round at the back, the arms go above the head. Lazy halasana. If you're comfortable, stay there. If not, bring yourself back and forth. And it really doesn't matter how far you go back. You're just exploring a little bit here. If you're staying, pausing for a couple of breaths. And then roll yourself out, find some kind of neutral position. And see if there's anything that you need to do before we take Shavasana. Is there anything you need to do for you before we take Shavasana? We're all so unique, so individual. And part of the agency of a long-term yoga practice is reclaiming really what we need for ourselves. That changes with time, it changes with age, it changes with the period in our life. And we want to have all these tools in our toolkit so that we can meet ourselves in so many different ways. Settling now over the next minute into a place of resting. In some ways into what is the most complex yoga pose, preparation for death, that we do every single time we lie down at the end of a class. Corpse pose, Shavasana. And as you lie, just noticing if your breath floats your bones in any different way. Maybe your experience of gravity has changed. Maybe the breath itself has changed. Then simply rest. I'll ring a bell in a couple of minutes. Just be with yourself for that time. And if you have the luxury of staying and you wish to stay, then by all means do. If not, asking yourself, what do I need to transition? What do I need to transition? Moving slowly in your own time. Bringing back your yoga self with you. It never really leaves. But gathering your learning as you transition to sit. And I'd like to leave us with the words of Linda France, one of my new favorite poems. Some of you will have heard me read it before. It's called Dreaming the Real. I look out on silver birch trees as I look out here, so this feels particularly appropriate. I'm lying down, looking at the color of sky falling through trees, dreaming the real, tasting what it feels like to love it. Why did it take me so long to let go? Simply exhale so that the day could breathe itself in and open without me standing in the way. How could I forget the grace of my own body, strong as this blue, tender as the white of the wild blossom, warm as midday light? Let me practice a patience bold enough to hold every weather, trusting the elements, the beauty of rain, all its shades of gray. I want whatever is real to be enough. At least it's a place to begin. And to master the art of loving it, feel it love me back under my skin. I want whatever is real to be enough. At least it's a place to begin. And to master the art of loving it, feel it love me back under my skin. Go well, be well. Enjoy your breath and gravity and space and all of these gifts that we've been given.